When estimating the value of real estate, the first thing you have to do is decide what method you want to use. This decision should be based on the type of property being evaluated and the aims of the owner. The three predominant methods used are the net operating income method, the gross income multiplier method, and the cost approach method. If it's a property that produces income, such as an apartment complex, the income approach method is the one that should be used. The income approach takes the income generated over a period of time, usually a year, and compares that to a ratio of value to income called the capitalization rate. However, there are a few pieces of the income approach that need to be understood to use this valuation method. The first is net operating income. Net operating income, or NOI, is the amount of money produced by a property in a period of time after subtracting the costs of managing the property. This value can be found in two ways. If you know the raw amount of money earned from the property, also known as the gross operating income, and then the operating expenses, the NOI can be found by subtracting the expenses from the gross income, like this. Gross operating income minus operating expenses equals net operating income. On the other hand, if you know the property value or the purchase price and the capitalization rate, you can multiply the value by the cap rate. Here's how that looks. So you may be asking, what is a capitalization rate? The cap rate is a ratio that compares net operating income to value. This rate shows the percentage of value that comes back as income. Another way to put this is that the cap rate shows the return on investment. To find the cap rate, divide the net operating income by the value of the property, like this. Now that we have these two numbers, we can use the cost approach to estimate property value. Let's say a small office building generates $25,000 in monthly rent, has a monthly operating costs of $11,000, and has a capitalization rate of 20%. From all of this, we can figure out the property value. We should start by figuring out what the net operating income is. Remember, this is discovered by subtracting the operating expenses from the gross operating income. Let's look at an example. For our example property, the gross operating income will equal the annual rent, and the operating expenses will be equal to the annual operating costs. To do this, we need to start by converting the rental and expense amounts to annual values. The monthly rental amount is multiplied by 12, the number of months in the year. The annual rental income, or our gross operating income, is $300,000. Then our monthly operating costs are also multiplied by 12. So the annual costs of running the office building, our operating expenses, are $132,000. Remember what we need to find net operating income. Gross operating income minus operating expenses equals net operating income. With values inserted, it looks something like this. So our NOI is $168,000. With this information, we can now determine the value of the property. NOI divided by cap rate equals value, which for our example looks like this. Remember that 20% when expressed as a decimal is 0.2. We divide the NOI by the cap rate. Given this net operating income and capitalization rate, the value for the property should be $840,000. The gross income multiplier is a valuation method that's similar to the cost approach. The general purpose of this method is to determine the asking price for a property. The gross income multiplier is found by dividing the asking price by the gross annual rental income. It's as follows. So say that we have a building that produces $73,500 in gross annual income. The average gross income multiplier in the area is 21. The gross income multiplier formula can be used to find out if an asking price of $738,000 is reasonable for that area. To start, we insert our values into the formula. Asking price divided by gross annual rent equals gross income multiplier. After division, we get a result of about 10 for the gross income multiplier. This would indicate that the asking price is way too low. And the other major valuation method is the cost approach method. The focus of this method is the amount of money it would take to completely rebuild or replace the property being evaluated. This method is appropriate for residential properties that aren't rentals. Like the income approach, we need an element of the cost approach before we review the formula. So let's calculate the total replacement cost. Total replacement cost is the total amount of money that would be needed to entirely rebuild a building on the same piece of land. To find total replacement cost, the replacement cost is multiplied by the square footage of the building. To find the property value using the cost approach, the degree of wear and use of the property, also known as the accumulated depreciation, is subtracted from the total replacement cost. This is then added to the value of the land. So let's do some practice. There's a building with a total replacement cost of $460,000 that sits on land valued at $311,000. This building has lost $1,000 of value over the last year. With this information, we can determine the value of the entire property. We'll be using the cost approach formula. With the values inserted, it looks like this. We should start by subtracting $1,000 from the replacement cost. This leaves the following. Now we add $459,000 and $311,000. With this total replacement cost, the value of the property should be $770,000. That's enough to calculate static property value. Now that you know this, you should be able to calculate things like changes in value and property taxes.